All right, we're back for another rendition of Sunday Night AstroLive. I'm Robert Phoenix, and my first mate is over there in the green room. He might be joining us tonight, so let's put out some good thoughts, some good vibes for Jasper the Astro Cat. Thanks for being here. It's another Sunday night, and we get to break down some astrology, hang out, talk shit in the chat room, also known as Chattaria, and hopefully we'll all learn a few things tonight. I know I have, even before the start of the show. You know why? Because I was floating around in my instincts and had the instinct to look something up that I'd noticed prior to the show, and guess what? It has some meaning for the show. So we're all learning, and yeah, you learn too. You learn as well. He's a learner. The learner and the educator. Isn't that right, Jasper? Are you coming over here? He's a Taurus. And he's a cat, so he's also a Leo. All cats are all kind of Leo. So he's preening himself. And he prides himself on preening himself. And as soon as he's done preening and doing all of his pre-show rituals, he should be over here. In the meantime, how is everybody? I hope you're having a great week, even though life in this realm is not always the easiest thing to be a part of now. The stakes are pretty high. And yet, at the same time, if we can learn how to laugh in the face of it all and have an attitude that in a lot of ways defies categorization. I mean, I really feel like if we can just laugh in the face of all of the absurdity and the measures of control and just the outward manipulation and the clown show effect, it's probably a better chance you'll get through it. And I know that there are things to be unnerved by. There are things to be upset by. There are things in this world that are just absolutely criminally not only unfair and unjust, but criminally programmed so that people wind up falling into the pits of despair and in the pits of somebody else's own hell that they've conveniently created for them. It all takes is just a few little nudges to move them into that boiling pot of shit that they've managed to concoct and cook up. And we're watching it in real time now because apparently, based on YouTube's new community guidelines, I can talk openly about the jab. I can talk openly about the so-called vaccines and their efficacy and non-efficacy. That's a sea change. Why is it a sea change? Well, I think there's a political component to it, but this is where things are really going to, where the rubber hits the road. This is where the rubber is going to hit the road. South Node in Scorpio, we talked about this before. This is when death surfaces and bubbles up to the top, from the underworld to rise up into this domain and into this realm. And we've been seeing it right and left. We've been seeing this aberrant behavior that's been promoted and programmed with our children in public spaces. First, it started off in libraries, then it moved into neighborhood bars. Now it's in strip clubs where you have children and people that are cross-dressing, dragged out, and it's like a family outing now. This is all South Node and Scorpio stuff, and they're letting you know that this is where things are going. They're the people that are dominating the programming are letting you know that this is where things are going. This is where things are being brought into light. This is the revelation of the method, and it's a dark method, to say the least. All right, look who's here. The cat of the hour. It's Jasper, the astrological cat. How you doing, buddy? It's your showtime. I know. Your adoring fans are here. They've been waiting for you. It's great to have you back, by the way. Your rehabilitation has been absolutely inspiring. Yep, absolutely inspiring. If you want to have, this is like the Brian song of rehabilitation stories, although in this version, Brian lives, right? You're like the Brian song. You came back from that place where you were in the basement. You were afraid, you lost your friend, and now you're back on the case. You're back on the case. You're such an inspiration to not just cats, many cats out there, but also humans as well. Great to have you back, even if you're only here for a few minutes. Because he likes to come and go. He'll go over to this other spot over here. He'll come back. So getting back to this idea, because we're living in very serious times, make no mistake about it. I mean, these are about as close to end times as we've seen. We've seen some shit, right? Like go back and drum up some old newsreels from the early 1960s, and you can see Khrushchev shaking his fist. You know, we're going to crush the West, and there's the whole Cuban Missile Crisis, and everybody's, essentially getting into a fetal position underneath their desks in elementary schools. Like I did that when I was a kid, but we did it because of the earthquakes in California. They ran us through those drills, right? I don't know what it's like to be in a school now, nor do I really want to know what it's like to be in a school now, because I think it'd probably be a pretty creepy proposition, and even some of the best schools. So they're telling us, right? They're telling us where everything is going. It's the revelation of the dark method, or the dark revelation of the method. Either way, it's nothing that, if a lot of these things had happened 35, 40 years ago, the people that were doing these things, they'd be in jail. The quote unquote men or the elders of the community would go in and put a serious stop to it. And I don't care, what the skin tone or ethnicity of those men were across the board. The color really wouldn't matter. And I've been giving some thought to like how and why this acceleration has happened now. And when I say acceleration, I'm talking about an acceleration into the descent of our human experience. In many ways, not by our own doing. I know a lot of people out there, well, if you consent to something, sure you do. Of course you do. When you consent to something, I mean, you are consenting to something, even if it's explicit or implied consent. Sometimes by not taking a stance, you do consent. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that's true. That said, I was thinking about my father and how my father was just cut from a different mold, as were a lot of men in his generation. Like they just wouldn't stand for shit. They wouldn't do it. These are people that were mostly born in Pluto and Cancer, and men who had fought in the Korean War and maybe the early part of the Vietnam War, because there was a little bit of overlap there. But if they had tried, if the quote unquote powers that were, I'm going to use that phrase, tried to do what they're doing now, say, let's go 30 years ago, 35, 40 years, those men would have been on the front lines of no with an exclamation point. It couldn't happen. I mean, even if they had the technology, and to some extent they did, television is an incredibly powerful tool through advertising, any number of news programs that could move the needle. They were all around. And when CNN really came on the scene, I remember I was around, I think 19 years old when CNN first started to kind of hit the airwaves. I was 19. And the reason I know this is because I remember George H.W. Bush coming to my junior college, and he was there essentially politicking because he was running against Ronald Reagan. This was 1980. So it was, I guess it was the fall of 1980. So I was 20. It might have been around probably late August. I was 19. I was on the cusp of 19, 20 years old. So Bush came there, and I was part of a TV crew at the college that was covering the event for our college, which was a PBS affiliate. So I got into the press conference, and I was just there to help out. I brought in some plants from the office to make it look good and, kind of spruce it up a little bit and whatever else they needed me to do. But I was within 15, 20 feet of Bush. Of course, we had Secret Service agents there. And I remember there was a guy from CNN who was there who I want to say it was Bernard Shaw, but I could be wrong. But it was a correspondent from CNN, and he was there, and he was covering it. And I remember I caught the guy's eyes for a moment, and we both rolled our eyes at the same time at what Bush was saying. So CNN has been around for a long time, and now it may not have had the numbers. Who knows? I mean, maybe the numbers back then are what the numbers are today, because CNN is like a flaming, bag of turds right now. That's what's happening. Nobody's watching CNN. They're dropping people right and left. They have some mistaken notion they can, somehow move back to the center, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I guess what I'm saying is that if they really wanted to push the needle, they could have in their own way. But because there was a group of people around who represented ideas, values, and more of a fuck you attitude, I think it would have been really hard. So instead, what they did is again, this is 1980. This is Reagan era. We know astrologically, Neptune is in Sagittarius at this time. Pluto is in Scorpio, just, kind of at the edge of Scorpio, I think. So all these, and I'm sorry, Uranus was in Scorpio. Pluto at that time was still in Libra. So, we're really kind of reaching kind of that final sort of window of Gen X, which really, kind of drops off around 1984, 85. By 85, we're really into the millennial phase. So the aspects were really good. I mean, those were good aspects. I love the, what the hell is going on here? All right, I have to change my camera. Hold on a second. All right, we're going to do a different camera. Here we go. I might go back to the other camera. We'll see what happens. Sometimes if I go back to the other camera, it actually works pretty well. It just glitches out sometimes. It's weird. Let me see if it'll happen. I like the other angle better. Let's see. Oh, this is when I disappear. Right. I become Claude Rains. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see later on if I get back to the other camera. See, this camera doesn't. This view doesn't bring Jasper in. No, it doesn't bring Jasper. The other one does. So I have to hold you up every now, just to remind people you're still here. That's right. You're still here. Jasper, what a comeback story. Inspiration to all of us. It should be a documentary about Jasper in his spring summer of 2022, beset by the loss of his Rosie, infested by the unfortunate legion of fleas left by the previous owner. The previous owner's a nice person, don't get me wrong. They were nice people, but they had dogs, and I bombed this house a couple times, right? But still, tragedy, loss, suffering, plague, pestilence. He's pulled through. Anyway, so what did they do during that time? Instead of being in a deconstructive mode, because we're also, at that time, we were in the third turning. So what happened was, instead of being in a deconstructive mode, that was the time where they were going to gather all the fruit and harvest the fruit. The fruit being the fat of the land, The fruit being whatever tangible spoils that were there to be raided. Hence, we had supply side economics, Ronald Reagan, and we had the SNL scandal with Charles Keating, which was ugly, very ugly, and scammed hundreds of thousands of people out of their hard-earned money. John McCain was part of that, by the way. Never really had to suffer for. So what they did is they deregulated the savings and loans, the SNLs in this country. So yeah, you make investments with your money. That's what we'll do. Michael Milken was involved, junk bonds. That's where they were essentially sending people's hard-earned money was into the junk bond market. And well, we all know what happened there. That's what was going on. People were kind of piling on. It was egregious American capitalism at its finest with a capital C. Of course, the tech industry started to boom around that time, and there were lots of investments and money to be made in that field. So they weren't going to tear it down. They had too many things to tear down. They had too much meat left on the bone. There were a group of people who, had they decided to go full-blown tranny stein, then they wouldn't have dug it. They wouldn't have allowed it. There were actually laws in the books back then as well that didn't permit that. So that wasn't really part of the program. Part of the program was, let's get everybody on board. Reagan's president. He's going to be this conservative icon. We're going to, let the little guy get in on the game. All these, really rich fat cat families and the corporations are going to get a shit ton of money because they're not to pay as much taxes. But guess what? You'll get your little slice of the pie too. So shut the fuck up and just enjoy the fruits of the land like everybody else. And that lasted roughly for 8 years, right? You know what's amazing about Reagan? We were looking at this the other day. Like, Reagan gets shot really early in his presidency. Like, really, he gets shot less than 35 days into his presidency. That's how fast things moved with Reagan, which is a very Aquarian deal. By the way, I think today is James Brady's birthday. I think September 28th is James Brady's birthday. And there were 3 men who were either Secret Service or Secret Service attaches that were there. 2 out of those 3 men are still alive. I think one of them has passed away. So ironically, it is James Brady's birthday. But it was like Reagan was shot like less than 6 weeks into his presidency. Of course, the guy who shot him was Hinckley. And Hinckley had a long-standing relationship with the fucking Bush family. So yeah, I think we know what happened there. And there's a lot of controversy as to whether or not that was actually Reagan who came back. What do you think? Was that Reagan? What do you think, Space Cat? Huh? Is that Reagan? You're funny. He's not going to chime in. You're not going to get political tonight? All right, go to your spot. He's going over to his spot over here on the right wing. So maybe he's making a statement. Jasper might be a right winger. That's why they aren't doing what they're doing today then. It's all part of the third turning. We're in the fourth turning now. And one of the things that has always defined these turnings are wars. And we are going to astrologically look at the beginning of World War II. And we're not that far away. World War II started on September 1st in 1939. Here we are, August 28th. And there are some planetary bodies that are in alignment with World War II, the beginning of World War II, and where we are now. So we're going to get into that tonight. That's going to be a big topic of our conversation. We're also going to continue to have a little bit of a talk on Chiron And again, interesting stuff, right? So I fired up the chart of Chiron, and which was discovered in November of 1977. And when we looked at Chiron last week, we looked at when it was discovered in 77. So it's in Taurus. And I did a long dive into Chiron and Taurus. And we'll go back into that dive again tonight. We'll take a look at that dive tonight. But from a different perspective, we're actually going to look at the day that Chiron was discovered. And something, again, just really interestingly popped over Chiron, right? Really interesting, just popped over Chiron. So we're going to look at that tonight. We're going to revisit Chiron. And what else we're going to look at tonight? Probably the discovery of Neptune as well, because Neptune the discovery of Neptune was on the 23rd of September. It was actually over 2 days, 23rd and 24th, but just for a marker, we're going to call it the 23rd, where it's actually the autumnal equinox. So we're going to look at, again, because I do think that the discovery of the planets, or with the case of Chiron, I guess we could call it a semi-planet, exoplanet. It's not really an exoplanet, but the discovery of the days of these planets, I think, is important in as much as what we understand what the theoretical meaning or symbolism or the mythology around them, which seems to play out in a pretty interesting way. And last week, I talked about how during Fukushima, that period, 311, is when we have a big change. We have a sea change with Neptune going from Aries to Pisces. And then we go into Uranus, which went from Pisces to Aries, all right around that time, 311, in 2011. So it's 311. And I really feel like something flipped during that time, that we became like, there's this entire inversion took place. And that, from that period in 2011 is really when, Saturn's in Libra. The next year in 2012, Saturn will go into Scorpio, and right around Halloween of 2012. And then really the big final event of 2012 is not, well, it is, of course, the Mayan calendar piece in 2012. And one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about is Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook happens just prior to the calendar revelation in 2012. So somewhere along that highway from Fukushima to 12/21/12, something happens and things become inverted. And we're no longer in this kind of Saturnian mold of Chiron. We flip and we go into the Uranian mold of Chiron. So everything around us now is more based on chaos and disruption. I mean, even somebody like Trump is he's a Uranian manifestation of Chiron. I mean, that's what he is. He's like, okay, here's this guy. He'll say anything. He's funny. He's disruptive. He's fucking Uranian, right? He's Uranian. And we were living in Uranian times. So why not have somebody who is the agent of Uranus as the quote unquote president? Well, what's interesting is by that time, things had flipped, right? So the Saturnian, or the more mainstream or the more normal manifestation of Chiron was already in place, but it wasn't Saturnian, right? It was Uranian. That had become the new standard. So Trump, because he's a Gemini and he has the true node in Gemini and Uranus in Gemini, what does he do? Well, simultaneously, he becomes disruptive, he becomes radical, and he has 3 planets in Cancer. They're all in his 11th house, Saturn, Venus, Mercury. So he's also looking backwards, right? So Trump is a very interesting, and again, I'm not here to talk about his efficacy, his politics, or, what happened with the jab. I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time, talking about it, and I have no problem talking about it. But from just this perspective, you have this unique expression with Chiron and Trump, because now all of a sudden he becomes the radical. He becomes the lead disruptor. And what is that disruption about? Well, it's looking backwards and theoretically taking the things that made America great and then making them great again. And look, I know about MAGA symbolism and how it's the highest level and the satanic church. And, there's all these things. I'm well aware of those things. Okay. That said, just from an astrological perspective, you can see that. You can totally see it in his chart that he is a disruptor, that he is going to be that Uranian component of Chiron. But what he's trying to do is bring back the Saturnian element of Chiron, which it's out the window now. Like that Saturnian element of Chiron is out the window. But it's not even like really interesting Uranus. That's like that to me. That is the strangely inverted part. Like everything that we see now in terms of clown world and it being very Uranian and disruptive, and and again, if you're watching the show and you happen to have a nose ring in, I am not here to diss you. That's your choice. But what we've seen is this kind of postmodern summoning of looks and trends and fashions from other times, whether it's the modern primitive look, whether it's the punk rock look, whether it's a combination of those two plus a little bit of goth. I mean, it's all kind of out there now. And those looks are being channeled as being edgy and Uranian, but what they're really standing for in a lot of ways is the mainstream dictum. It's nothing that, I don't think it's that interesting. It's so patently Uranus. It's just not that interesting. What's more interesting would be the true Uranian expression, which is apart from that. So now where are we? Well, we're back to Saturn again, which is, okay, well, guess what? We're going to be in a relationship. We're going to be monogamous. We're not going to sleep around, right? We're going to, conserve our spirit and our energy between one another. And again, I got no problem. If you want to have an alternative lifestyle and you want to have 2 lovers, whatever, that's your thing. You're here on this realm to experience shit, right? And you'll experience things. So I'm not here to like call you out in any kind of morality. I'm just telling you that from a dominant paradigm position, that things have gone so far to the extreme, and the extreme being pushed as the mainstream narrative, that really the true Uranian narrative now has nothing to do with that. It's like I talked about this lionization of people who are overweight. Again, I've been really overweight. Go look at some of my old videos. I look like a fat fuck. I look at those videos. I'm like, what the fuck was going on with you? Oh, well, I know what was going on with me, but I look like a fat fuck. And I hated it. I'd look at myself in the mirror and I couldn't believe what I had turned into. And I had to do something about it because number one, I didn't like how I looked. That was number one. And number two, it was really deeply impacting my health. That was the other thing. And I've told the story before. I remember kidding myself that if I got a haircut or I shaved, boy, I'd look different. And I'm like, no, you still look like a fat fuck. You just have a slightly better haircut and less facial hair. So, but what we're seeing now is we're seeing this lionization of, well, remember how it was really in vogue to look your best and look healthy. And wear clothes that were, semi-form fitting. Remember how that was really considered to be the natural thing to do? Yeah, we're flipping that. We're flipping that now, and we're going to have a new program. A new program is, yeah, just be pleasantly and abundantly obese, and just don't worry about it. Just revel in it. Just roll around and jiggle it up, right? And look, if that's what you want to be and that's what you want to do, God bless you, right? God, but I got to tell you, it's not the healthiest thing for you. It's just not. It's going to impact your system. You're going to be pre-diabetic, and I've seen people that have gone down that path, and boy, did they get a wake-up call. God bless them. So they're pushing something that a lot of people are just going to check that box. And I think some of this has to do, and I don't think this has anything to do with astrology, but I'll try to bring it back to astrology. But I think some of this has to do with the fact that a lot of people have given up. They have this whole concept of quiet quitting at work, that people have basically on their jobs just said, there's nothing left here for me. I'm going to kind of mail this in. I know I'll get my paycheck or whatever, right? So there are a number of people, like there's this whole concept of quiet quitting. And I think that there are people that have just basically, fuck it, why invest in myself? Why invest in myself? Because the world is going to shit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to celebrate that with other people who have divested themselves of caring about being here, their body, this place. So there's a joyous and riotous celebration of self that's taking place right now. And look around. I mean, I think that there's probably some level of grievance there. I'm not gonna say that there isn't, because when you really look around at the world and you drill down into its component parts, you can see that's a pretty fucked up place. Pretty fucked up. And I think it's gotten more fucked up over the course of my lifetime. It was always kind of fucked up. It's really fucked up now. So it's out there, right? Everything that's been occulted and hidden, thanks to the South Node in Scorpio, it's bubbling up, and we're really seeing it. And it's not a lot of fun. We talk about things like the World Economic Forum and the New World Order. These people, even though I think a lot of them are just puppets and just lackeys, because there are people behind them and the people behind them, right? They're the ones that are engaged in I don't want to use the word mass manipulation. It's almost too easy to say that, but they're the ones that are engaged in guiding how things move, right? Just go back to that whole Reagan era, right? They knew that they could guide that in a certain direction where people would listen to them, that they would have some kind of, patriotic resonance with Reagan, and they get paid. That's part of it. They're just looking at where the power is, and they're just kind of going to push it and guide it. And they're doing it now as well. It's just a different version of it. And they have a number of people who believe that really this is the best thing that could happen for humanity, because deep down inside, these people know that there's something rotten at the core here. The problem is that those people have misidentified what's rotten. And so they have essentially come together through a number of different means, programming, diet, injections, frequencies. So they've banded together, and they have chosen who they think that the worm in the apple is, right? But they're probably not as close to that as they think they are. But are they wrong? Are they wrong that there is something foul and something amiss in our current system? No, they're not. They're not wrong. And in that regard, that's something that could unite us all. Ironically, it could unite us all. However, there's no agreement as to what the real problem is, or who the problematic groups are, and I'll use the word groups. I don't think it's just one group, but I do think there are some groups, and they're problematic. But if we woke up and we understood the problematic nature of those groups and how they've manipulated things like time, history, and money, we might actually have a chance. But unfortunately, that's not really on the table right now. It could be. I'm not saying it won't be. Could be, but not right now. In fact, I got into it. There's a couple days a week where I go into Twitter, and for whatever reason, I think I can have a reasonable conversation with somebody that probably doesn't have my same point of view. I actually pulled one off today. But last week I was, it's just a reality experiment that I have every now and then. And the reality experiment is to approach somebody with a reasonable point of view and just to see what they would do. Right. So this is the Virgo in me. And there is this guy, Jason Whitlock, as you know, is a sports writer. He's got his own TV show on the Blaze. And I like Jason a lot. I don't always agree with Jason, but I like him. He's a Taurus. He's got a really interesting Venus and Mars opposition. He has Venus in Aries and Mars in Libra, right? So those are two. That's an algorithm that's kind of difficult to work out. But I do like Jason, and he went on a kind of a tirade this last week about Nick Cannon and who else? Kevin Durant and Aaron Rodgers. We're going to look at Aaron Rodgers' chart tonight. That was the other thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, because Aaron Rodgers is doing some interesting shit. Now, I've always liked Aaron Rodgers. There was a time when here let me say this. There was a long time when I liked Aaron Rodgers, and then he went and he dropped into the fucking woke crowd. I'm like, oh, dude, did you go there? Did you really? But then he kind of moved out of it. He moved out of the wokey crowd. And the reason why he did that, Aaron Rodgers is a Sagittarius, and he's trying to get to the truth. And this is the thing that we love about Sagittarians. They will fall down, right? They'll fall down, they'll get back up, but their quest to be authentic and find their truth is, it can be pretty inspirational at times. And sometimes they just keep falling backwards. Greg Allman, perfect example of a Sagittarian. I mean, how many times did that guy go into rehab? Quite a bit, but he always came back, and he always seemed to, have this spirit of, okay, well, let's start the band back up again, whatever the band was, and keep going, right? And, one of his great songs, I'm No Angel, talks about that, and almost from a slightly ecclesiastical perspective. So Aaron Rodgers might be the most interesting man in football right now. He might be the most interesting man in sports. Last year, okay, let me go here. We'll get in there. I got to go into this exchange. So this guy basically calls Jason out for being that's the big thing. Oh, you're a fucking hypocrite. You're a fucking hypocrite. Look what you wrote. Yeah, I got you. Gotcha. Right? The big gotcha moment. Everybody lives for the fucking gotcha moment. See how consistent you were. Everybody's inconsistent, okay? If everybody was fucking consistent every day, you'd be inhuman. You'd be Mr. fucking Spock. That's how you'd be. That's who you'd be. And even Spock was an alcoholic. Well, in real life. So it's like, okay, he had this whole thing because he was talking about how we owe Kyrie Irving and Aaron Rodgers an apology. It's about vaccines. And this guy comes in and just rips him a new asshole, talks about, how he saw Jovan Belcher, who played for the Kansas City Chiefs, get shot. He didn't see him, but he was a beat writer and a columnist with the Kansas City Star, I think, at the time. So he wrote a big column about Jovan Belcher, and he was like so anti-gun. Like Jason was all about gun control. Well, if you watch a show over the last couple of years, he's revised his position. And he's even said it. He said, you know, there was a time when I was really anti-gun. He was very clear about that. And he says, since then I've changed my stance. Well, can't we do that? Aren't we allowed to change our stances? Isn't that what being human is about? You can have a point of view for a long period of time and then gather new evidence. And once you gather new evidence, you can say, I was mistaken. I was wrong. I had the wrong position here. I think that's part of being human. So I basically said, well, to the dude, like, hey, have you ever not like changed your mind or, you know, had something new come into your life where you had to rethink something? And then he called me an idiot, and that I'm the type of person that Jason plays on. And I'm like, you'd be fucking kidding me. First of all, you don't know anything about me. Of course, it's Twitter. Second of all, it's like, no, you know, are you excluding yourself from the potential of this conversation? He couldn't even answer my question. He couldn't even answer the question. He just started pointing his finger at me and saying that, you know, I'm the shitbag that the other shitbag preys upon. I'm like, okay. Then he said, well, you tweeted at me. That's the other thing with Twitter. You tweeted at me. Well, dude, it's fucking Twitter, okay? You tweet something unless you implicitly put into your little tweet there, buddy, that nobody's allowed to reply. That's how it works. You put a tweet out and people tweet back at you. What am I supposed to? And by the way, I was not like being aggressive with this guy at all. I was clear about what I was trying to I wanted to see. I didn't want to change him. It's just an experiment. That's all it is. It's an experiment in humanity. And then he said, eat a dick. Okay, here we go. Right? They can't even have a conversation. You're just going to throw in the ad hominem. And at that point, it's like, all right, that's what you want. That's what you're going to get. So anyway, I kind of let him have it in my own way. I don't really want to revisit that. But this is where we are now. Right? This is kind of how things have evolved or de-evolved. And we're in this really binary universe where very few people can have a conversation about something. And it even goes into the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. And Aaron Rodgers, we'll get into it. I'm going to get into his chart because his story is really, really interesting. And I think he might be the most fascinating person in sports right now because he still plays at a high level. For how long? I don't know how long he'll play at a high level, but he'll be there for a couple of years. And unlike Tom Brady, I think Tom Brady's in trouble. I think Tom Brady is going through major, major crisis. And I could even bring his chart up and we could look at Tom Brady's crisis. Tom Brady outside of football, I think could be very lost. Very, very lost. I struggle to think about Tom Brady off the football field. Aaron Rodgers outside of football, he'll be fine. The dude went to Peru last year and went tripping on ayahuasca. Right? Do you think Tom Brady would ever do that? I don't think so. Maybe he should. All right. Let's get into you guys. Always love to see who's here on a Sunday night. So let's see what we got. There's Ryan, the head of the International Woodworkers, the head of the International Introspective Woodworkers Union. What's going on, Ryan? SL Sully. There's Charles Mazak. Student loans from Catholic Jesuit schools forgiven first. Maybe. There is our man, Mr. Lewis Walden. If you're looking for a good deal in Southwestern Florida real estate, that's who you need to see. And he says, I like having a few beers before the show. We like when you have a few beers too. Cronenberg. So wait, the discovery of Chiron come during the Fed chairmanship of Arthur Burns. Apropos. Oh, we'll have a look. Daniels M. At Robert, the way you explained Chiron last week was the perfect description how I felt my whole life. Chiron doesn't lie, man. You know, Chiron has been one of my great teachers, truly one of my great teachers in astrology. And my first chirotic encounter at the age of 28, when I had a nervous breakdown, I have Chiron and Aquarius at 28 degrees, and I didn't know it at the time, but sure as hell, you know, understood it, especially after the fact. And I have a Chiron Venus Mars grand trine in my chart, so I think it helps me understand the nature of people being different and being able to bond and have a relationship with that difference, and with Mars to, you know, guide and help and, you know, work through those differences. So Chiron has been a tremendous teacher for me. And even my Chiron return of 50, where I had to go back through the gate of madness because I hadn't fully resolved it, even though I thought I had, I still hadn't fully resolved it. And it became another teacher for me. So Chiron really is the key for me. And I think there are so many brilliant lessons and gifts. So we'll get into more of that tonight. So I'm glad it was meaningful. Susie Gemini is here. What's going on, Susie Gemini? Meow meow. Did you hear that? Meow meow is here. There's my man Steve. What's going on? Hey, look who's here, the techno brat. Nice to see you, Emily. JJ. Reine de Blanc. She's here. Alyssa Ayers, not loan forgiveness, tax redistribution. There's always a languaging, isn't there? Kelly M, what's going on, Kelly? Good evening. Happy Sunday to you. There he is, Steve Letro. The electrification of the chat has begun. Wendy Eater's here. What's going on, Wendy? Good to see you. Shirley Lociavo. Hi, Shirley. Let's see, who else do we have? By the way, Steve's mom, apparently, aka Thor by the door, kicking down the door of the hospital room she's been in. So the god of thunder has to have a mother of thunder, apparently. Kabuki Theater, we all died, a Mandela effect, 2012. We could talk about that. Let's see, who else do we have? But maybe not tonight. Elizabeth, hey, what's going on, Elizabeth? Congratulations, you are now an auntie. Congratulations. Lala HK, so the funniest meme said my mortgage identifies as a student loan. Oh, fuck, that's great. That is really great. Let's see. Terry Catterley. Hi, Terry. Good to see you. Welcome. Who else do we have? There's Kevin Stick Evers. Sandy Hook, Superstorm Sandy, as well as end of October. It's weird how we always have these superstorms that take place. We had the Harvey Weinstein storm, and then we had Hurricane Harvey, right? Who else is here? The Crimmies. What's going on, Crimmies? Stephen Chris in the house. Let's see. There she is, a lovely and talented Jonas. 32 foot second acceleration due to gravity, 33rd degree master leaves the pole behind. Very interesting. Chiron is at 3 degrees Taurus, which makes it the third, well, when it was discovered, which makes it the 33rd degree of the zodiac. Is that a thing, modern primitive? Sure is, Susie. Taurus rising with the nose ring here. There you go. Right on the dime. Look, I got nothing. I have nothing against body modification. I used to have an earring a long time ago, by the way. I got nothing against body modification. Nothing. You want to modify your body? Modify away. It's your body, your choice. You can do whatever you want. And if you look good doing it, even better, right? And for some people, that looking good is very subjective. And there might be a community that thinks it is fucking looking great. There's another community that might say, I'm not into it. And there's that kind of in middle where it's like, I'm not into it, but it looks pretty cool, right? So my big thing is, just because it looks trendy and hip and edgy, right? Think for yourself. Whatever you do, just think for yourself. Step away from the matting crowd. All right, who else do we have here? Yankee pitcher injured because of tattoo infestation. Is that true? Or infection? I don't know. Let's see. We got Benito Diaz. There he is, the shadow man himself. Synthetic Uranus. I like that. I like that, Bill. Oh, thanks, Ryan, for putting that up. We got to do a little love for True Hemp Science tonight. Let's see. Jacqueline, I still got to, Jackie, I'm gonna give you a ring this week. We got to talk. I got a plan for you. I got a role for you for this upcoming event. By the way, the event is sold out. Can't believe I'm saying that. It's sold out. In fact, we took a few more people than the number that we capped it at, only because there were so many people that wanted to be a part of it. And I'm really looking forward to there's going to be big energy in October. Really big energy. Of course, myself, the Leo King, we're going to have some other astrologers there that are on tap. I've got some interesting events planned for us. We'll be in the hill country. The weather will be fantastic. And the food will be really, really good. And we'll all get to be together and talk astrology and revel in an environment of, how do I say this? Acceptance, right? Acceptance. All right. Who else do we have here? Lady Virgo. I have 2 nose rings, 1 husband. Look at that. You see, this is why you don't want to pigeonhole people. It's like, it's every time you go to pigeonhole like somebody, it always kind of backfires on you. I try not to pigeonhole people. I really, really do my best not to pigeonhole people, because I've done it in the past, and guess what? It's like, oh shit, I was wrong, right? I was wrong about that thing. So again, my motto, just fucking think for yourself, right? Just don't, I mean, if you want, if you are and look, I feel like millennials are a generation with that Pluto and Scorpio where they like intensity, right? They like tattoos. They like the body modification. Like, they're into it, right? I think it's part of the makeup of that astrological assignation. There's nothing wrong with it. If that's your path and that's where you want to go, then do it. Just fucking think for yourself. That's all. That's all. And if you're somebody who is, wearing a shirt like I'm wearing, right? And just because you wear a certain shirt and wear a certain suit and wear a certain tie, which puts you in kind of a certain club, like, you think for yourself too. Just because you look that way and dress that way, and you think that you're going to get some degree of acceptance, and believe it or not, in some parts of this country and world, that'll still open doors for you. It's getting less and less, by the way, but it'll still open doors. Whatever, just fucking think for yourself. If you think along the lines of groupthink, and you look a certain way, and you have groupthink, then I think we need to have another discussion. But if you look a certain way and you're willing to step outside of your groupthink, it's liberating. You'll fucking blow people's minds when you do that. You'll blow their minds. They'll go in, they'll think, oh, look at this person. She's got two nose rings. Look at her, right? And then they sit down and they talk to you. It's like, holy shit. She's smart. She's got some integrity there. I had a great conversation. Well, that just really blew my mind, right? That's a cool thing about life. And the same can be said for the transverse, which is, oh, you sit down, you think you could have a reasonable conversation with a dude in a suit. And next thing you know, you're like, that's a fucking psychopath. I remember one time when Mitt Romney was running for president. He's the perfect example, the guy in the suit. And this dude sat down, and he didn't sat down. It was one of these press the flesh kinds of moments. And he asked Mitt Romney where he was on medical marijuana. Of course, Romney's going to want to be in control of the whole thing. So he says, well, I'm really in favor of synthetic marijuana. Well, why? Because you can have a fucking patent, and the pharmaceutical companies can make it, right? And this guy gets in and has a conversation with him about it. And what does Mitt Romney do? He becomes the guy in the suit. It's like everything you think about the guy in the suit, that's what he became. What would have been a really more interesting conversation would have been medical marijuana. I hear that they've been doing a lot of work with synthetic marijuana. I also know people who have had to use medical marijuana for cancer. And I'm really interested in getting to the bottom of, which one is going to be the best for us. Like, why couldn't he just fucking say that? Right? I mean, number one, it doesn't take him out of his little pharmaceutical company pocket, right? He could go back to those people and say, I just said that in that moment because I needed to, make sure that, we don't lose a voter in our base. And, right, you got to be sure that your synthetic marijuana does what it says it's going to do, because I'm going to take money from you. I don't want to look fucking stupid, right? So he became the guy in the suit. He could have had a way different conversation, but he was the guy in the suit. So just don't be the guy in the suit, or just don't be the cliche, whatever it is. You're still a gray fox. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate that. Let's see. Benito is healing up like a rock star. Let's see what else we have here. Who else do we have? They have a butter knife to their throat, an old saying from my grandpa. That's an interesting saying. I've never heard that one before. A butter knife to their throat. That's a good one. Let's see. We got my man, Robin. Alyssa Ayers is here. Who else? Sandrine's Vox Services. Bonsoir back. The Steve Borg Resistance. What Art Bell was into this whole Steve thing, wasn't he? I have to admit, there was this Steve thing going on before the Steve thing was going on. Art Bell made a big deal about Steve. So when I was in high school, I'd even heard about the Steve thing. And I went to high school with a guy named Steve. He probably doesn't watch this show. His name is Steve Carrillo. He was a Steve. He was just, this whole kind of thing about Steve. Now, I've known some other Steves, like, Stephen Kent, although Stephen Kent didn't like to be called Steve. Steve Carlton, that's an interesting Steve, I'd have to say. But I think we have some Steves. Steve Crimmy, Steve Letro. They've redeemed the Steve code. Who else do we have here? Naveed, what's going on? I invest myself by studying astrology. Knowledge itself is the best investment. It certainly can really pay off. I thought Robert said quiet pudding, like when you eat a whole lot of pudding at 2 a.m. That's really interesting. Quiet pudding. Have I ever eaten a lot of pudding at 2 a.m.? I don't think so. I've probably eaten cake at 2 a.m. I think I've had the 2 a.m. cake walk. Let's see. Oh, Fran is here. What's going on, Fran? Good to see you. Let's see. LMM, beautiful people. Fran is CC Jones. Who else do we have? Did I say hi to Kabuki Theater? If not, another hi back. Aaron, I'm 42. I feel the way sometimes. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Anybody else? Anybody else? Veronica Braley, the horse whisperer. Susie's here. Just started watching Westworld season 1. Fascinating yet horrifying. A lot of people are into it. I dropped all my cable shit. Friend of a friend twice went into a restaurant and asked for hot tea. The waiters didn't understand. You mean you want me to take the ice out of the tea and heat it up for you? Wow, that is a generation gap. That's a generation gap reality. Vayman 33 made the truth no prevail. I don't know. Maybe. Let's see. World Economic Forum is problematic. They are problematic, but they're so obvious in how problematic they are. You know what I mean? They're so obvious. And when I had Christopher Knowles on my Friday show, about 6 weeks ago, I'm going to try to get him back on a show for 9/11. That's not too far away. I got to reach out to him because he's got his whole astro-theological breakdown of 9/11, and I want to hear that from him. So I'm going to try to get him on the Sunday night show to do that. I think it'd be really cool. But one of the things we both agreed upon is that you go back and you watch the videos from the people who were attending this last Davos conference, and not the Klaus Schwabs or the Yuval Noah Hararis or what's her name, Ursula von Leyen. That woman, she's the head of the EU. And I said this before, and nobody ever talks about this. But if you look at the historical record and lineage, her ancestors were some of the largest fucking slave owners in the United States, right? As far as that peerage and those records go, on a particular timeline, that person's like grandparents, grandpeepees owned a lot of fucking slaves. Nobody ever talks about it. Anyway, she's the head of the EU. But getting back to Davos, both Christopher and I agreed that a lot of these people who were there being interviewed and talking, they're really average at best. They're really, really average at best. So the World Economic Forum, its ideas, which seem to be being pushed at a breakneck speed, they're certainly dangerous ideas, I believe, for humanity. And my belief is that those ideas are all centralized. You know, evolution, progress, novelty, complexity, development, they're all centralized. And what I think, this is just me, right? Just me with some quaint old thoughts. But I really think that people need to be enabled or empowered or not disenfranchised so that they can be engaged in development, that they can be engaged in the pursuit of ideas, that they could be engaged in exploring new concepts, new technologies, old technologies that are resurrected, whatever, right? But they're not doing that. What they're doing, because we're in Uranus and Taurus, and we're in a de-evolutionary cycle, that they're dumbing everybody down. They're dumbing everybody down, and they are disenfranchising people who theoretically want to get ahead in life. And again, they're going to start like with this idea that it's about white privilege. Oh yeah, it's all systemic, and everything associated with progress and everything associated with the world that we're in right now is all due to systemic racism. So we just have to tear it all down. Or we just have to tear it all down because it is infected. It's like a cancer that's permeated the entire body of humanity, right? there's a better way about doing this. There's a better way. It's about incentivizing people to be innovative. And it doesn't matter what your fucking skin tone is. Okay. If you're innovative, you're innovative. Period. End of story. That's where we need to be. That is the true Aquarian age. Hello. Where people can contribute across all walks of life, but really contribute and have it be a decentralized experience. Not this centralized, well, we're in control of the innovation and we have the right ideas and we have the bright ideas. In order to get to these places, we have to completely dismantle the old world so that we can reinvest in it. How did that work with the last timeline shift? How did that work? Well, they took a few interesting ideas that were probably commercial and applicable and said, we'll keep these. We'll start the second industrial revolution. We'll have these guys who are called robber barons, and they're the ones going to be in charge of the implementation of these ideas. And everything else we'll just put in a fucking museum somewhere, or we'll get this Tesla guy to develop it, and then we'll just sit on his patents. That's really what happened, in my estimation. I could be completely wrong, but my instincts and my research definitely trend into this area, right? So when we go back and we look at, what was it, 1848, 1849, 1850, where's Uranus? It's in Taurus. It's exactly in Taurus, right? It's like, okay, here's this de-evolutionary cycle. We ramped up. We had all these interesting, cool things that we probably stumbled across for all intents and purposes. And now we're going to tear it down, break it down, and we'll piecemeal it back out. It will show you, oh, isn't this a cool invention? Is this a cool idea? We'll have some World's Fairs. We'll bring them out. We'll display them. And then guess what? Oh, look, progress. This is a new version. The new version is upon us. And carbon capture and all this bullshit that they're working on. But it's centralized. It's not decentralized. I mean, I think there are some of you out here that are listening to the show that have children. You know, would it be great if your children were as smart as they could be? And I mean really smart, not like institutionally smart, but really smart, and given tools that tickle their curiosity, given tools that expand their imagination, right? Given encouragement to explore these areas and discipline in order to make their dreams come true. Isn't that what we want? Instead, that's not what we're getting. What we're getting now is like a corruption of the file, a corruption of the system. It's like there's a virus that's gotten into your computer and everything is getting corrupted. That's what's happening. And that's why the World Economic Forum is dangerous, because they're the ones that want to be in charge of the innovation. They're the ones that want to be in charge of social change. I mean, you can throw everything else on top of it, from surveillance to social credit scores to the green economy, carbon credits. I mean, all that shit's part of it, right? It's all part of it. But the part that is the most damning and the least empowering is the fact that all innovation, change, technology will be centralized. That's it. That is the dark new age. That is the shadow of Aquarius, where they will give you things that look nice and shiny and bright and all these things theoretically that people go, ooh, isn't this great? I don't have to own a car, but now there's this maglev train that I get on with a bunch of people. And if I've been a really good boy or a really good girl or a really good, whatever my gender is, I get some credits to ride on that thing. That's how this thing works. In that world, that's how it works. Instead of somebody sitting down and, hey, you know what? I came up with this great fucking idea. What if we did this, this, and this, and then got together with a few other people and they said, well, you know what? We can get some financing for this and build a prototype, right? And it's like, wow, look at what we have a bunch of kids. These Gen Z kids with Uranus in Aquarius and Neptune in Aquarius, right? I mean, they have some brilliance. They're born into fucking brilliance. Their generation has brilliance written all over it. I mean, if you just look at the progression from the millennials to the Gen Zers to the Gen A'ers, right? So what the millennials are here to do, and I've talked about this before, they're here to break shit down. Pluto and Scorpio is not about being warm and fuzzy. Pluto and Scorpio is about breaking things down and then ultimately rebuilding something, right? Which is why I think a lot of millennials are on board with the new Schwabians, because the new Schwabians are giving them the model, right? They're giving them the model. Tear this shit down. It's all patriarchal. It's all systemic. It's all colonized. Tear it down. And then come with us, be with us, and then we'll rebuild it. And we'll make the world look like something that you'll enjoy. You'll like it. It'll be a vegan fantasy, right? Not all millennials are like that, though. But that's what they're supposed to do. That's what millennials are supposed to do. They're supposed to get engaged in the transformation of culture. That's what they're there to do. Now, what is the Gen Zers supposed to do? With all that Aquarius and Pluto and Sagittarius, it's like, well, we're going to bring the new ideas. We're going to bring the new ideas. We're going to bring the innovation, and we're going to bring the new spirit and the philosophy of the time. And then you have these Gen A kids with Pluto and Capricorn, and they're going to come along and say, well, we're going to create the structure, form, and order for this. That we'll be the mayors of the new world, the mayors or the mayoresses or whatever, right? That's how these three generations are supposed to operate in terms of their sequences, right? That's where we are. And eventually into Pluto and Aquarius, well, that'll be, I mean, those kids won't start really coming of age for another 18 years, right? So they're just going to start to be born next year, so 2023. So you won't see them until 2041, 2042. It's a long ways off. Is it right? Yeah, long ways off. So, those kids will be the inhabitants of a completely new society and a completely new world, right? Based on a very, very different kind of social structure and social order. We know the dark side. We know what the dark side is. It's not good. It's not a fun dark side. So the best thing that we can do is to empower the young people who do want to tear shit down, but not just be nihilistic about it. Like, you know what? I think this might be a better idea, or this might be something that, like, I know. I'll give you an example, and then we'll get into some shit here. But this is still astrology, right? So I know somebody who Pluto and Scorpio, like, they are involved in something that they're just, and it's nothing egregious. So it's not like they're involved in some kind of dark cult, although some people might say it is, but it's really not. But so some new limitations have been placed on what this person does, and there are limitations that really get into their wheelhouse around things like, privacy and autonomy, right? And so they're making a value-based judgment that they are going to sacrifice the money that they could make from this thing in order to retain those precious and sacred values that they have. So in essence, they're not selling out. They're not going to sell out. So what does that mean now? Well, ultimately, with Pluto and Scorpio, they have to create something new, right? The no leads to a yes. The death of one thing leads to the birth of another. And this is what we need to encourage with the millennials and the Pluto and Scorpio kids. Some of you might have some of you might be one watching this show. The idea here is to create something out of the ashes of something that you don't agree with. That's important. So let's encourage these young people in order to do that. And again, this is just me personally, right? That those things need to be applicable across every single aspect and strata of our society, that nobody's left out, that nobody is elevated at the expense of somebody else, right? Because that's just like, old wine in a new bottle. That's all it is. It's all that is. And we see that now more and more constantly. And that's just not going to work. It's not going to work because we're not wired that way. The only time we're wired that way is if we've been programmed in that regard. And that's when we get people that have chips on their shoulders and they've had some kind of egregious loss. And they, in a lot of instances, they want to blame somebody. And we've all been there. We have all been there. We've all looked around and said, this place is really fucking unfair. And it's really easy to start going like this, right? Point the finger, point the finger, point the finger. And there's a lot of places you can point that finger. You know what? I do it. But I don't want to stay there. Because if you stay there, it just all becomes toxic and it becomes bitter. So you have to be able to kind of see it and then move on. If you don't see it and move on and you're stuck there, you're going to get just embittered and angry and ultimately calcified, and nothing will ever be good enough at that point. Nothing will ever be good enough. It's just the way that whole thing works. And then these Gen Z kids, nurture their, some of them are out there, man. Some of these Gen Z kids are really out there. And some of them are voice. The thing about Gen Z is that Pluto and Sagittarius, which is really, it's like Sagittarius can be really zealous, really, really zealous. So you could see some of these Gen Z kids just, they can be part of the burn down culture, but I guarantee you at some point they will flip, because that is the nature of Sagittarius. They will flip and they will, see the light in their own way. And like, wow, I was really off the path there. And then you could see these kids doing a 180, morality somersault, right? Just a complete 180 and be on the other, or half a somersault, whatever they call that. Like a flip, right? You just flip. That'd be a 360. You know what I'm talking about. That's what they'll do. And it'd be like, well, a couple of years ago, your pronoun was box snake. That's what your pronoun was. And what, you're a woman now? Oh, okay. That's what I'm talking about. So we have some interesting times ahead of us. Really interesting time. And let's see if we can help some of these younger people who've been lassoed by the system and basically told that their world, or the world that they grew up in or inhabited, is toxic or dangerous or damaging. And what happens with kids is that they eventually find out that they weren't always right. And we've all been there. And your parents wind up looking pretty smart at some point down the line. All right, let's get into some astrology. Thanks for listening to the opening monologue and rant there. Can I get my old camera back? What do you think? Or am I still going to be the invisible man? Let's try it. Wow, I'm still the invisible man. That is so weird. Okay, now I'm in gray land. Now I'm in the gray world. It's like I'm glitching between worlds here. Look at that. I'm back. All right. There we go. I'm on the other side of the portal. Look who's back again. My buddy, the Astro Cat. Yeah. You bring out wisdom, don't you? All right, let's get into some astrology. Shall we look at where we are astrologically? Why not? Oh, before I do, I got to get in a shout for my friend Chris, who is the sponsor of the show. And I do have to honor that sponsorship because, number one, he's a cool guy. Number two, he's got some really good products. And I can certainly attest to that. So as some of you know, True Hemp Science is the sponsor of this show and all of my shows. And True Hemp Science, I'm going to go right through that website, is the brainchild and storefront of my friend Christopher Lynch. And Christopher has been assiduously working at developing high quality hemp products that he sources from all around the country, and anything from pain relief, inflammation, to sleep gummies, which I'm a huge fan of. You can find them all here at his lovely website, his lovely and relaxing ASMR website. And if you spend $100, you will get some product thrown in. And all you got to do is go to truehempscience.com/ref/23. That's all there. And type in the code 15 mins. It's 15 MINS, 15 mins. And that lets Chris know that you're coming through this portal. And if you spend $100 or more, you get the goodies. You get up to 150, you get free shipping. So there you go. And it's great to work with Chris because he's a local business here in Texas, Austin specifically. And I have some friends that went by there who have a product line, and they stopped in and they showed him the product line. He said, well, why don't you drop a few pieces off a consignment, right? So this is great. I love how this works. We can build our invisible network and our invisible community. We got JJ in the chat who has her own wonderful designs with jewelry right there. A number of people have gone to see Dr. Joan, who does mercury extraction, holistic dentistry. I mean, just so many resources in our network. Artemis Designs, who super talented, does some really nice astrological pendants and rings. So it's great to be a part of a group that's just fantastically talented. And if you want to buy a piece of real estate in Southwest Florida, go look up Lewis Walden. So there you go. All right, let's get into some astrology. Here we go. I was looking at Virgos. Some very interesting. So the 28th and the 29th with Virgos is pretty interesting. Why don't we start there? Since we're in Virgo now, let's start with some Virgos. Let's go with 28th. Michael Jackson's born the 29th. I might get into some shit when I talk about Michael Jackson. Because there's a lot of, like, Michael Jackson, like, almost has a cult of his own. I've said a few things that some Michael Jackson people didn't like, and I was like, tread lightly there, brother. Although, who knows? Tonight I'll probably say it again. Okay, what do we got? So this is today. 28th, slightly interesting people. You have Lou Piniella, who does seem like a Virgo to me. Lou Piniella always seemed like he had chafed underwear or a chafed jock when he managed. He was a hell of a player. Lou Piniella could hit, and he was a very good manager, although I'll never forgive him for managing the fucking Cincinnati Reds when they beat the A's. Lou Piniella, to me, he seems like a real Virgo. He also was the manager, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but he was the manager of Ron Guidry. If he wasn't a manager, he was a coach or a player with him right around the same time. And Ron Guidry had the nickname the Cajun Blade. Steve Crimi knows all about Ron Guidry. I think Ron Guidry is probably one of the most underrated pitchers ever in the history of baseball. But that's a Virgo. You'll see Virgos are pretty underrated people, in my humble opinion. We got Scott Hamilton, the skater, who I have absolutely no opinion about. Lee Jansen, the golfer, who I have no opinion about. Who else do we have? Let's see. The one person I do have an opinion about, besides Lou Piniella, is Meyer Lansky. And we're going to get to Meyer Lansky in a second. David Soul, didn't he do a song called Don't Give Up on Me, Baby, or something like that? Remember that? It was kind of a big hit for him. He went from Starsky and Hutch fame to total flame. I think he wound up living on a boat in England somewhere, like in London. on the Thames. But it wasn't one of those affirmative kind of like, hey, I'm going to live in a boat and live a cool life. It's kind of like maybe not as affirmative as we think. Shania Twain, Virgo. There are some beautiful Virgo women. I will tell you that right now. You go through the list of Virgo women, and there are some real beautiful. Shania Twain is in the mix. Somebody's like, say, oh, she's a dude. Like, can I just have the fantasy of Shania Twain being a woman just for the rest of the show? Tomorrow you can tell me she's a dude, if that's true. Okay, who else do we have? Anybody else? There's somebody I want to talk about. Anybody else here? This day with Virgo is okay. Don Dankinger, the umpire. Charles Boyer, the actor. I think Benny Agajanian, was he like a race car driver? Anyway, here's who I want to talk about. Let's stop fucking around. Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky, born in Grodno, Belarus, born August 28th, 1902. His birth name was Meyer Sukowalansky, so he got into the abbreviated name game. No early or personal life here. American major organized crime figure who, along with his associate Charles Lucky Luciano, was instrumental in the development of the National Crime Syndicate in the United States, associated with the Jewish mob, who basically took the Italians under their wings and said, this is how you fucking do it, which is true. Developed a gambling empire. Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky was the dude. Who's the other guy? Was it Rosenthal? Anyway, he was said to own percentages of casinos in Las Vegas, Cuba, the Bahamas, and London. Although a member of the Jewish mob, Lansky undoubtedly had strong influence with the Italian-American mafia, played a large role in the consolidation of the criminal underworld. The full extent of this role has been the subject of some debate. Okay. As Lansky himself denied many of the allegations against him. Well, I can tell you right now that Meyer Lansky was a liar. Sorry, the liar. Let's look at the chart. So he's a Virgo. You would think that being a Virgo, he would try his very best to attend to matters of purity and some degree of sanctity, morals, scruples, things that we would associate with Virgo. Not Meyer Lansky. First of all, let's start with the Moon-Uranus conjunction. This guy could go off like that, right? Moon-Uranus, which means he could also have connections when it came to money and resources with people that were outside of his circle, hence the relationship with the Italian mafia. To me, that's a very Moon-Uranus conjunction aspect. Now, there's no time here for him, so we're just going to look at some of these angles. Does he have any kind of true feeling for people? I would say people that he is invested in terms of power. Yes, I do. He's got a Venus in Leo, trine Moon, trine Uranus. So if it had to do with power and or some degree of loyalty, probably mostly to him, he's going to be invested in that. However, that said, the Sun-Uranus square is rebellious. It is a rebellious square and it doesn't want to follow rules. You got a Sun-Uranus square in your chart, you're not going to want to follow rules. It's just the way it is. Sorry, end of story, right? That's it. And if you're on the emotional side of things with the moon in Sagittarius, like you could get triggered at the drop of a dime. So what do we have here? About a 5-degree separation. He's got moon at 22 Sag and Uranus at 17. So we do have a 5-degree separation. That's manageable. That orb is manageable by and large, but they are conjunct. And then here we have Virgo coming in. And what does Sagittarius want? It wants more. Give me more, right? What does Virgo want to do? Well, Virgo is sometimes content with what it has, but not with this chart. Sorry, ain't going to happen. Then he's got a Pluto square, Sun Pluto square. So he's into power. And people who have Sun Pluto squares have to deal with power. Doesn't matter where it comes from. It could be your own issues with power. It could be other people's issues with power. You're going to have to deal with power. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to essentially channel that thing, right? And the square, you'll get tested. And sometimes you can get into that square and it'll really test your power. And sometimes that power will test you back. But you will always learn something. So this to me, this is it's kind of Promethean, right? With the Pluto Sun square. It's like stealing fire from the gods with a Pluto Sun square. And then we have the Pluto opposition with the Moon and Uranus. And he could turn on you. This is a guy that could turn on you if he needed to. If he needed to be loyal, he's got the Venus trine Moon, Venus trine Uranus. He might have some unusual allies in that world. He also has this Mars right here. Was that Leo? Yeah, 3 degrees, Mars and Leo. He's with the Virgo sun. In a lot of ways, he's going to be very calculating with the Virgo sun. Extremely calculating. He's got a Sun Saturn trine. So it allows him to build. And on the surface, with the Virgo sun, he could be very, very pragmatic. But this is not a guy you would fuck with, obviously, with the Sun Pluto square. But even with Venus and Mars, especially Mars way back here behind the sun, that's the muscle. Like Mars is the muscle. And we can see the opposition with Jupiter. Now he's got Jupiter and Aquarius. So what does that mean? He can build a fucking network, right? Again, we don't know what house it's in because we don't know the time, but that's the network. And the Jupiter Mercury trine, like he's probably got some insight and understanding to things like law and, finding some degree of win-win between people or groups. Like, okay, we'll get this part of the turf and you get this part of the turf and we're good until, we decide to fuck you over or you decide to fuck us over, one of the two, right? But Mercury, Jupiter trine, he's not dumb. That's for damn sure. Why did I say he's a liar? He's got a Mercury Neptune square. Now, in a case like this, I got people that come to see me as clients and they have Mercury Neptune squares. I don't accuse them of being a liar. I don't. They may lie to themselves. That could happen. They could lie to themselves. They could say, well, I'm going to allow this person to play a certain role in my life. They could do that. They could lie to themselves about decisions they've made. They could lie to themselves about, again, it revolves around things like justification. But are they outright liars? Are they going to come out and tell you a bald-faced lie? In a lot of cases, the answer to that would be no, because most of the people, I'd say nearly everybody that I was a client, as far as I know, I mean, we've all told lies. We've all told lies, whether they're big lies or little lies, or if we haven't told the truth and we've omitted the truth, that's like telling a lie, right? So we've all told some degree of one lie or another, right? But there are people who have done that for whatever reason, and then there are people who are habitual liars. And this guy would be a habitual liar with a Mercury Neptune, based on what we know about him. So when he says, oh, none of that's true with a Mercury Neptune square, you couldn't believe a fucking word he says. Bottom line, end of story, right? He's got a Mercury Mars sextile. So when something happens or needs to happen, this guy will act on it. Like Meyer Lansky act on it. I'll tell you what Meyer Lansky does not have a lot of is water. Not much water. He's got Neptune and Cancer. What's it doing? It's squaring Mercury. That's it. So what do we know about people that don't have a lot of water in their charts? Well, they could suffer from empathy and compassion. A lot of times it can be helpful for them to have other people in their lives with water. If they have planets in one of the water houses, 4th house, 8th house, 12th house, that can be helpful, right? That brings them a little bit more water. He's got no water. He has Earth. He's got that Sun Saturn trine, and everything else with Lansky is pretty much fire and air and combustible. So here we have a Virgo mastermind right there, Mr. Virgo mastermind. Why is the sun at 16 Virgo? Wednesday, August 28th. That's weird. Anyway, that's what we got, right? Is it 16? Yeah, we got 5, 10, 15, 16 Virgo. So that's Meyer Lansky. Oh, September 10th. Oh, Gregorian calendar. See, that's what I was wondering there. Why didn't you fucking show me that? All right, let's try this. It's the same thing. It's just different, weird. Oh, September. So they've got this thing in the Julian calendar. I don't know why they've done this. That's weird. So September 10th. Now I'd have to recast this chart. Interesting. Maybe I'll do a redo next week. All right, let's go back. My apologies, because like that's not 16 Virgo. Hello. Let's do the 29th of August. Let's take a look at Michael Jackson's chart. All right, so for all of you in Europe, you're probably already on the 29th. So let's see. Who do we have? It's remotely interesting. Gigi Allen. Oh my God, probably the least Virgo person I've ever run across. I'm not going to. Ingrid Bergman. There's another theoretical Virgo beauty. We talked about James Brady, who was with Reagan. Got some bullets to the head. Let's see. Some people believe he was actually a clone or some kind of robotoid, and they just ruled him out for gun control. I'll let you guys figure that one out. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Oh, the director, William Friedkin. There's an interesting guy. The land speed record racer, Gary Gabelich, who was the driver of the Blue Flame. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Elliot Gould, who totally seems like a Virgo. The comic Lenny Henry is a Virgo. Comic singer. Here we go. Let's check in with Michael Jackson. So we have an alternative birth time, 1209. We have another birth time where he's a Pisces rising and a Scorpio rising. Why don't we take a look at both these charts? I'd have to say Michael Jackson would be a Pisces rising. So this is a double D rating with Lois Roden. In this chart, so it doesn't matter what chart, Michael Jackson was born on a Pisces full moon. So he's in the spotlight, the man in the mirror. Sun-Pluto conjunction. He's born with Pluto in Virgo. Mercury in Leo, right? And that's retrograde at 25 degrees, so that's behind the sun. We have Venus there, Venus-Mercury conjunction, singing, art, and Uranus, a Venus-Uranus conjunction, which to me totally fits because he had the weirdest fucking relationships. Michael Jackson had the weirdest. You remember when he was married to Lisa Marie Presley for about 2 weeks? I think it was so fucking weird. And then there was a time where he was dating Brooke Shields or something. He had the weirdest relationships. You know who else was close to Michael Jackson? Was Marlon Brando. That's another weird relationship. So a lot of planets in Leo. We got that Sun-Pluto conjunction. All right, so if you're playing with the traditional Michael Jackson script, the Sun-Pluto conjunction could fit into that model where he continued to change the structure and complexion of his face and body, right? If you were in that model, you could do that because that's what a Sun-Pluto conjunction would represent. And with Virgo, it'd be about some thing related to purity, right? Like having the perfect face or having the perfect skin tone, whatever those things are. So you could probably, probably see that there. It's like, okay, this thing's going to transform him. He's going to become transformed. Like his visage, his persona will become transformed. But then there's other things going on in this chart as well. Saturn in Sagittarius, in trine with a lot of his Leo planets. And then we have Neptune, Jupiter, right? And we have Jupiter in Libra right there. And then Neptune in Scorpio, kind of a close conjunction. And then his true node happens to be in Libra, right? 24, 25. That's the mean node. So, there's a part of Michael Jackson that is like really sweet and artistic and creative. I mean, we can see all of that. It's here, right? He has this kind of Virgoan innocence to him, but behind all that is this driving force to create. Now, what's weird here is like the Joe Jackson stuff, because he has Saturn in Sagittarius, and in this chart, it's on the midheaven. So what's interesting about this chart is that the father would be very instrumental in his career and his life with Saturn in this position. But then you have the inconjunct with Mars. And, there have been numerous reports that not just Michael, but all the Jackson boys were sexually abused. And one of the famous stories was being in a recording studio, or it was either a recording or TV studio, and each one of them was taken out of the studio and defiled. And after it was done, they came back and they had to perform. Right? And that was not uncommon. So when we have this Saturn-Mars inconjunct, again, you're dealing with the influence of the father in a way that is unusual and like not on the surface. And people will talk about how heavy-handed Joe Jackson was. But with the inconjunct, it might be way more heavy-handed than people really completely understand. What else is interesting is that you never hear about Michael's mother. You always hear about Joe Jackson. But he's got this Moon-Saturn square in his chart. And just by and large, that has a lot to do with depression. So Michael Jackson with Moon in Pisces, he's depressed, and he's just trying to find some, relief in his chart. What Michael lacks in his chart is he's got some air. He's got Jupiter in the true node, right? But other than that, he doesn't have a whole lot of air, which means that he doesn't have a ton of objectivity. He's got the sun-moon opposition. We can see the full moon there. And then we'd have to go all the way down to Neptune to find a sextile with the sun, right? Because everything else is just not quite there, or the conjunction with Pluto. So it's not quite a singleton. He's got some aspects. Brings Jupiter along with Neptune. But to me, it's the Saturn in conjunct with Mars. And he got into that fire with was the Coke commercial. It was right around 1982, if I'm not mistaken. What's going on astrologically? Here, let me do this because I didn't work this out for the show, so I'm just going to work it out real time quickly. Give me 1 second here. I appreciate your patience. I want to see what the planets were doing on that day for Michael Jackson. I've never done this before with this event. Okay, so the Pepsi incident in November 1983, they started a partnership with Pepsi. On January 27th, 1984, Michael and other members of the Jacksons filmed a Pepsi commercial overseen by Phil Duesenberry, a BBDO ad agency executive, and Alan Potash, Pepsi's worldwide creative director, at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles during a simulated concert before a full house of fans. Pyrotechnics accidentally set Jackson's hair on fire, causing second-degree burns to his scalp. Jackson underwent treatment to hide the scars and had his third rhinoplasty shortly thereafter. Pepsi settled out of court, and Jackson donated the $1.5 million settlement to the Brotman Medical Center in Culver City, California. It is now closed. The Michael Jackson Burn Center was named in his honor. Jackson signed a second agreement with Pepsi in late 1980s for $10 million. The second campaign covered 20 countries and provided financial support for Jackson's Bad album. All right, so let's go back to January 27th, 1984. Let me see if I can just dial this up on the solar ephemeris here. Let's go back in time. January 27th, 1984. So early in the year. Okay. Let's give you guys some visuals here. All right, so January 27th. And again, I haven't done this in real time. I mean, I've done this, we're just doing this in real time. So January 27th, 1984. Okay, we have the sun at 6 Aquarius, moon probably in early Scorpio. I'm interested in Mars. Oh, there we go. Mars in Virgo. That's right on his sun Pluto. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. That's Mars Scorpio. My bad. We'll look at that. Is that opposite his natal Mars? We're going to check that out. Let me just look. Hold on. So where is that Mars? It's at, January 28th, right? So 8 degrees. 8 degrees. Let me go back here. Where's Michael? Okay, so that Mars is going to be on his Neptune at 8 degrees. That's interesting. Mars, Neptune conjunction. I mean, usually that's pretty creative, right? It's also fiery. It doesn't oppose his natal Mars. His natal Mars is at 22. Taurus. All right, let me go back here. What else does he have? So Saturn was at 15 Scorpio, which puts it 15 Scorpio. So you had a Saturn-Venus square on that day at 15 Scorpio. And then the moon was at, see the moon was Sagittarius. So moon was on his sun. I'm sorry, Saturn. Moon was on his Saturn. Venus was in Capricorn. Pluto Pluto is a 2 Scorpio. So that day, there was a Mars Pluto. Let me just see. So it was January 27th, 84. January 27th, 84. Yeah, so he had Pluto at 2 and then Mars at 7. So when you look at his natal chart, so you had Pluto right on his Jupiter. Pluto was at 2 degrees Scorpio. So it was right there, right on his Jupiter, and a Neptune conjunction. Pluto and Neptune were exactly conjunct on that day. That's interesting. And then Uranus was at 12 Sag, and Saturn 15 Scorpio. Uranus at 12 Sag. So that would put Uranus, this is Mars, 22, not quite. I mean, so for me, yeah, Uranus square to his moon. You had Uranus moon square on that day. To me, it's Pluto. You know, when you look at that day, he's got that Pluto-Neptune conjunction right here. And then he's got also, Mars is also in Scorpio, right? And it's right, so Pluto-Mars right here in his chart. That's pretty intense. That's, now there are people, okay, so there are people that believe that there was something supernatural about that event. That whatever happened, this is all post-Thriller, right? That whatever happened with Thriller, that there was some kind of supernatural carryover from Thriller with this. Like it was almost as if, you know, the pyrotechnic was a demon that had gotten out of control. Now, there is a school of thought that believes that Michael Jackson never made it back. And I've played this before. Let me see if I can find it. So there's a guy by the name of Dave. And I'm going to play this. I might get dinged for it. So somebody put this together, and this guy, Dave, showed, nobody really knew who he was, but he shows up on Larry King when Michael Jackson dies, and his face is all burned. Okay. So I'm going to play this for you. Again, be your own judge here. But I would say when you get Pluto and Mars together, like right on his Neptune, and also on Jupiter, it's just going to be bigger, right? And maybe even to some degree the supernatural effect. You might get something like this. So let me play this for you. So this is Dave, and I'll play part of the long player, and then somebody does kind of a morph thing here. So let's get into this a little bit. Michael Jackson, Virgo, born on the 29th of August, which will be tomorrow here in the U.S. Let's watch a little of this, and then we'll play the other video.
Now here in Los Angeles, Miko Brand was with us almost every night after this untimely passing. Longtime Michael Jackson friend attending the funeral. And Dave, yes, that's his name, Dave. He was David Rothenberg. He was set on fire in 1983, suffered, as you can see, terrible scars. Michael Jackson befriended him and paid for a lot of his surgeries. Dave is also attending the burial. Why Dave?
Well, to liberate myself from the confines of my father's criminality.
He caused the fire?
Yeah. He is a criminal, and he caused all this. To free myself of his name and his legacy, I decided to become my own person through changing my name.
We'll find out how Michael helped you, but Miko, is that a typical story of Michael helping people like this?
Absolutely. When he would hear about...
Okay, so that is just weird from the jump. Now, I'm not saying that Dave is Michael, okay? But I am implying that there's something very weird going on here, because he says that my father was responsible for this and that I wanted to divest myself of my name. Let's hear a little bit more.
Stories of people in need or needed help, and when we watch the news together.
Because Miko Brando, who there's the Marlon Brando connection, which again is really weird, right? This the whole brand. Anyway, let's just keep going.
He'd reach out to them, send them a basket, send them a note, get well, or whatever the incident would be, and he'd always reach out to people and help people. Even driving around town, he'd stop and help people.
How did he find out about you, Dave?
He heard about me, and he had contacted me and wanted to meet me.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 7 years old at the time.
And were you in the hospital?
I was not in the hospital at the time. I was in interim, back and forth from surgery.
And what did he do for you?
Well, basically, he befriended me. He took me into his life, which is very rare for Michael to do. But he opened up his arms to me and accepted me as a very good friend of his. And throughout the years, he never let me go.
Okay, he never let him go. So I'm going to play you this other video. And by the way, I have not seen this other video before. We're seeing it for the first time together. So let's see what happens.
Dave, what don't we know about him we should know?
Well, I believe what people fail to realize is that Michael was a human being. Throughout the years, I think he was kind of stigmatized. And I entered an arcade, and there were all these Paul McCartney records all over this, The Girl Is Mine, and, this and that. And I remember sitting down, and at the time...
After this all happened, why?
About 2 years ago, I changed it legally to Dave, to liberate myself from my father and to establish for myself as an artist. It was kind of like an artistic decision to do that.
And a lot of people...
So if that's the case, then who was Michael Jackson? Who was Michael Jackson? The people that saw him do all the, the magical moonwalking and, the music that he did. But the Michael Jackson that comes along later is just so different and patently weird. Or just like weird, and holding the kid out the window and all that shit, right? And then the Michael Jackson before all of this is, he's very sweet and, he's the, off the wall, that Michael Jackson. So it's food for thought. Mars is in Gemini. So why don't you go ahead and kind of wrap your head around that? I mean, there are people who are convinced that Dave guy. Now, maybe, and here's the weird part, maybe there is a Dave and there is a Michael, right? Maybe they are not dissimilar. Maybe they're actually, Michael taking on that character for that role. And if that's the case, again, who is this other guy? The Michael Jackson impersonator. Weird shit, right? Really weird shit. But Mars is in Gemini, so we just had to go there tonight. Okay, let's get into some more charts because I have a bunch more to get to and go through. why don't we look at Chiron? Because I think Chiron is really, really interesting. And there's some amazing symbolism around Chiron. And by the time we're over tonight, we're going to get into some chart of the moment, Virgo stuff. So Chiron, technically speaking, was discovered on the 1st of November in 1977. Right here. So this would be Chiron's chart, right? There's Chiron, 3 degrees, the 33rd degree of the zodiac, which Steve Letro alluded to, not the 33rd degree, but the 33rd degree where you're no longer bound by gravity. And in this chart, I just went for noon. Oh, what did I do? 4:35? Why did I put 4:35? I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know why I put 4:35. Maybe that was the time they discovered it. In any case, 3 Taurus is the ascendant here. So what's interesting about Chiron now becomes this: what is the first sign that we discover Chiron? It's Taurus. And last week I did a whole dissertation about Chiron and Taurus, and how a lot of people who were born during this time and just prior to it, and then the subsequent years until Chiron goes into the sign of Gemini, just don't really feel at home. They're not at home on this planet. I got into a lot of the symptomology of Chiron and Taurus, which is not wanting to be touched, having issues with digestion, allergies to fabrics and scents, also intimacy, and for all intents and purposes, being quite normal on a kind of a face-to-face basis and coping, but really looking around going, what the fuck am I doing here? And how did I get here? So Chiron really makes its discovery during this time, because I think it links us to our relationship to Earth. And I think this is the biggest takeaway from Chiron and its discovery, that we can understand more about who we are and why we're here because of it. And that in a lot of ways, what it does is it is the rupturing of our earthly existence. I talk about how the degree of Chiron represents what we call the Chironic crisis, or the fall of the individual. And the fall of the individual meaning that you're kind of knocked out of the orbit of grace in your life, so that you have to overcome something that can be very, very challenging, difficult, and problematic. And so in this case, we've got Chiron in Taurus, right? And so the degree, which is 3, we'll call it 3. What does that have to do with just being born onto this planet? What happens at the age of 3? Well, at the age of 3, essentially, you're moving into the first 3 years before you get into the first Saturn square. So it's half the Saturn square. So the first Saturn square happens at roughly 7, right? And that Saturn square sets you up between 6 and 7. And it sets you up to be moved into elementary school. So it takes you away from your home. You know, I remember the first day that I went to, it was the first day before I went to school, like first grade. And I remember my grandparents had a kiddie pool set up in the backyard. And I knew that I was going to school the next day. So it must have been like a Sunday. And it wasn't like it was very hot out. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't really hot. And I remember just being in that kiddie pool all day, or as long as I could. And I couldn't swim, and it wasn't very big, but I remember just going around in circles in that kiddie pool for what I thought at that time was like hours, because I didn't want to get out. It was almost like I could feel that that kiddie pool was like my womb, and that the next day everything was going to dramatically change. And I was sort of in this kind of wheel of Dharma in some ways in that pool. I just kept going around and around and around. I remember my mindset that day. And I never wanted to get out of that pool. It's like I wanted to stay in that pool forever. But I knew that I couldn't. Right? There was this strange kind of melancholy with it. And I even remember what the color of the pool was. It was red and white and had those kind of red and white panels on the side. And it, like I said, it wasn't very big, but it was big enough for me to be up to my waist in the water. So it wasn't like a little tiny fucking kiddie pool. So that's the Chiron, that's the first Saturn square. So what happens at 3? Well, most people that map brains and get into early childhood development, they believe that by the age of 3, that you are roughly about 95% developed mental. Like you and your brain and a lot of the networking is already like 95% developed. So does that correlate to the age of 3 with Chiron for everybody? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but it definitely feels like a very interesting degree for just human development, because you're not quite at 4 is definitely something, right? Like you're 4 years old, and usually about 4, you're getting ready to go into like preschool, but 3, you're not quite there. Like, so 3 is like the outlier before you hit preschool. Like you'll do a year of preschool, and then by the time you get to 5, you know, you hit kindergarten, and then 6, you're into first grade. So 3 is this outlier year, right? I think it's an interesting degree for sure. And even like if we look at, you know, what else was going with Chiron? There's the South Node in Aries. So Chiron is actually helping us deal with this South Node function of being the individual. I mean, even when I look back and being in that kiddie pool, it was like, I'm going to be moved into like a world of widgets. I mean, at some level, I knew that. So here we have the South Node behind Chiron. And what do we have today? So today we have Chiron transiting at 15 degrees. So it's pretty much right on where the South Node was when Chiron was discovered. So this is an interesting connection just based on this time that we're looking at this, because there is a relationship between Chiron, right, and the wound and the South Node. And so ultimately, if we play this game out a little bit, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to move into the true node, which is Libra in partnership, and that here partnership conjunct Pluto would transform us, right? And then this is how we deal ultimately with the chirotic crisis. It's relating with the other. I think this is a very interesting chart. Super, super interesting, just in terms of, you know, how in general, how we deal with Chiron. And even Mars, like look at where Mars is. It's at 2 degrees in Leo. And we know that Mars has a lot to do with childhood and creativity and play, right? And there at that degree, it's in square with Chiron. It's almost like forcing, you know, people to come out and act or be engaged in some form of application of will. It's like forcing us, right? So we can just kind of look at this as a bit of a template for Chiron. And here, even with Saturn conjunct Regulus, look at that, at 29 degrees, you know, this harmonic bridge between Chiron and Saturn. It's like, you know, follow through with this, follow through with the path of your life, and that you will attain some degree of hopefully integration and maturity. And with Regulus, it's, you know, your ability to be truly autonomous and authentic and taking responsibility at the highest level for your own life. Like, this is an interesting template for Chiron, I have to say. It gets even more interesting. So the mother of Chiron is named Philyra. All right. Now, what I want you to pay attention to here is I want you to pay attention to Jupiter and the moon. So the moon is in Cancer and Jupiter is in Cancer, retrograde. So just pay attention for a second. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into Philyra's story. Okay. I'm going to get into Philyra's story. So Philyra was what's known as an oceanid. And I've talked about Philyra before. And Philyra, now there's a couple of different stories about Philyra. One of the stories, let me give you a visual. This is so this is Philyra with Kronos. Now, there's a few interesting tales here. Here's another one. Look at Kronos. He's like, oh yeah, baby. I can't wait, right? So Philyra is a nymph. She's an oceanid. And one of the stories is that Kronos is highly attracted to her. He looks down upon her, right? And he says, I'm going to turn myself into a beautiful stallion. And I'm going to get with Philyra. So in order to do that, what happens here, supposedly, this is one telling of the tale, is that Ray or Rhea came upon their meeting place. Ray is Cronus's wife. Cronus leaped out of bed and transformed himself into a horse to escape. As a result, Philyra birthed a half-horse, half-man hybrid, centaur, Chiron, Centaurus Chiron, to ease her shame. Kronos transformed the girl into a linden tree. I mean, so that's one of the stories. Now, another telling of the story is that in order to escape the watchful gaze of Ray or Rhea, right? What did they do? They turned themselves both into horses so that they could, copulate and do their thing. But because of that, well, Chiron is born. And so then there's another part of the story or another version where Kronos is clearly a horse and Philyra stays Philyra. And she pulls a Catherine the Great on this horse. So there are three versions, but in all three versions, Kronos is this beautiful white stallion, and that he winds up impregnating Philyra, who gives birth to Chiron. Now, remember, I told you to pay attention to the moon and Jupiter in Cancer, right? Because I stumbled across this tonight. It's like, this is one of the cool things about doing this show. And I had no idea at all. So what sign? Okay, what is Cancer? Cancer is the crab, right? It's the crab. And there's actual species of crab named Philyra malefactrix. Can you fucking believe that shit? Philyra malefactrix. So somebody named this crab, this particular species of crab. It even has a map for it down here. Where is it? No. This particular species of crab, this guy Kemp, 1915. The family is Leucocidae. So there are all these synonyms, but it's Philyra malefactrix, this crab. Now, did Mr. Kemp know that Jupiter was conjunct Cancer at the time that Chiron was discovered? No, because he wasn't fucking around when the time Chiron was discovered. Like, he did this in 1915. So how did he know? How did he know that Philyra was, well, in that chart, how did he know that the mother, Philyra, of Kronos, I'm sorry, the lover of Kronos, the mother of Chiron, Philyra, on that chart, Moon in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer. And we got a crab, the mother crab, the oceanid, Philyra malefactrix. And what happens? She creates a male child that is, in her minds, malefic. Like, she can't deal with it. So there are multiple versions of the story. A lot of these myths have multiple versions of their story. So there's one version of the story where Philyra is just completely ashamed by Chiron. It's like, please, I can't be around this monstrosity. I never want to have another child again. So she says, turn me into some inanimate object. So Cronus says, okay, you're a linden tree. Now, there's another version where Cronus takes pity on her and says, I'm just going to turn you into a linden tree. Period, end of story. So you can believe whichever version you want. I think the former has some legitimacy because that's how we view Chiron, and that Chiron is, in many ways, a symbol of shame and of rejection, right? And then to some degree, trauma and guilt. So I think that's fascinating. Like, how the fuck do you know, right? Like, you don't. See, 1977, 1915, Philyra malefactrix, the crab. Fascinating. And even to some extent, right, at that time, what do we have here? We've got Neptune. And what is Philyra? She's an oceanid. She's a child of Neptune, child of Poseidon. She's one of these elementals, right? And then what does Kronos do? He comes down from heaven as what? A horse. And what do we have here? We have the inconjunct all the way down to the mother, right? Cancer, Philyra malefactrix. It's right there. Right there is your celestial story with the birth of freaking Chiron. It's all right there. I think it's really interesting. Totally interesting. And then what do we have here with Neptune? The conjunction with Juno, which has to do with birth. And in this chart, it's 8th house. I don't know why I chose this time, but I chose this time, 4:35. Now that I look at it, maybe the time chose me to choose the time. Interesting. I think it's interesting shit because I'm very into, and even this Chiron on the South Node, and how with Chiron we learn about the vulnerability of our humanity, and then ultimately how do we get through it? We get through it by connecting with another, right here, and that connection with the other transforms us. Interesting stuff. In my humble opinion, that shit is interesting. Okay, what else are we going to talk about? Let's talk a little about Virgo. So, again, one of these kind of momentary notices, pre-show. Let me show you here. My gal, Lady Artemis will get a kick out of this for sure. I might even do a little pitch. This is really interesting right here. Let's pop this out. So apparently we're like going back to the moon or something. So I'm one of these people. I do believe in space, but I believe there's a universe beyond the universe that we know. So the new rocket to go to space is Artemis. So on Monday, the countdown clocks began ticking Saturday for the maiden launch of a NASA new Space Launch System rocket Monday on a long-awaited mission to send an unpiloted Orion crew and capsule around the moon and back. Okay, so for all you flat earthers out there, just, you know, keep the din down for a minute. All right, because I want to get into Artemis as a symbol. Charlie Blackwell Thompson, NASA's first female launch director, called her team to their stations in Fire Room 1, Kennedy Space Center, and began carefully scripted 46-hour, 10-minute countdown at 10:23 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There were some lightning strikes there. Is that what's happening? Are they firing up their Tesla towers? Is that what's going on there? So I've heard this story / theory that the reason why they have these countdowns is because that there are these they're like rivers that move through the sky, where they actually have these portals that actually allow them to get through the firmament. This is what I've heard. I can't confirm it, but they know they have an understanding as to how these things work and when they're going to show up. So they have to have a countdown, a very specific countdown, so that based on their escape velocity and this thing coming across the firmament, that it opens and they're able to go through and get on the other side of the firmament through the Van Allen or whatever. I'm not saying it's true, but this is what I've heard. And this is why they have these countdowns. But anyway, I thought it was interesting, right, that Artemis would be the symbol for this next moon launch. So let me show you what I found about Artemis. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, right here. So Artemis shows up in a lot of different myths. By the way, this is from jessicadavidson.co.uk, who writes about astrological mythology. And in Greece, or Grecian mythology, in ancient Greece, Artemis was a virgin moon goddess of the hunt. She was chaste and fiercely independent and merciless towards any man who offended her. Artemis is usually depicted with her trademark bow and often accompanied by a deer and hunting dogs. And she reveals Virgo's love of nature and the wilderness. Artemis can be linked back to earlier goddesses under the name of Mistress of Animals, see Leo myths, and to Celtic goddesses of various names, such as Ellen of the Ways, often depicted with antlers. Ellen is associated with migratory routes of reindeer and acts as guardian of the ancient trackways known as ley lines, a possible link to Mercury. So what we have here is a ley line in the sky, theoretically opening up for this rocket to perhaps go through. It's just something to think about, right? Again, I think it's interesting that they've named this rocket and this project, this is Artemis 1. and it's happening under the sign of Virgo. And Artemis does have this representation in Grecian myths as a number of goddesses who do have a relationship with the sign of Virgo. I believe Ceres is another one of them. So while I'm doing this, why don't I just do a quick little pitch for Artemis Designs here, because let's do this. Oh, Jasper, you're in such a good state, aren't you? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So let me just do a quick pitch for my my friends Kimberly and Ibrahim, since we're on the topic of Artemis. This is their company, and they do really cool exotic collection stuff. So they have a whole horoscope collection. So if you're into their horoscope designs, right, you can get pendants, you can get earrings, you know, all the different signs are all there. Looks like they got some discounts going on, but they're not just limited to, they've got stuff with tarot and coin. They've got a Janus coin, which is super cool. They have some really high-end stuff as well. So if you're into this and you like these cool astrological designs with pendants, and I guess they got some more down here too, you can check out their website, artemistx.com. And so, hey, we're having an Artemis party, and they're launching Artemis 1 under the sign of Virgo with a representation of, guess what, Artemis as a manifestation of Virgo. Pretty cool, right? I think it's cool. I like it. All right, why don't we get into a little Neptune? It's another one of these charts where it's like, well, what was going on when Neptune was discovered? You know, where were the planets? Well, we saw where the planets were when Chiron was discovered, which I thought was pretty interesting, to say the least. And let me see if I can find Neptune here. Da, 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 da. Oh shit, we got World War II to go over too. We're burning the oil tonight. I do want to go over World War II. Why don't I go to World War II? Seems a little more important than Neptune. Not really. This is an interesting chart. Let me show you this chart. So World War II was like, there's a day and a time and everything where this thing starts. It's September 1st, 1939. We're not that far away. Today's 28th, tomorrow will be the 29th. So we're going to run across the anniversary of World War II this week. You're probably going to hear a fair amount about it. So there are some things that I thought were pretty interesting. Number one, let's look at some of the conjunctions here. So Jupiter is on an 83-year cycle, and it is 83 years since Jupiter was at this degree. Look, 7 and 7, boys and girls, that's an 83-year cycle. That's how, when Jupiter goes, it's a 11 point, let me see, because I found a pretty interesting article on this. Who's that? Oh, that's Maria Shriver. Gosh, she looks like a cat lady now. Let's see if I can find this article. Oh, that's the wrong one. Maybe over here. Oh. Come on. Whatever, let me see. Greek mythology, Philyra. All right, hold on. I might have to go back. coming back, Jasper? You taking off? Yeah. All right, let's go to the chart again. I had this thing here. Where is it? Yep, here it is. Jupiter's exact 83-year cycle. So Jupiter has its own cycle, which is 11. It's not an exact 12-year cycle. It's a little bit off. So Jupiter's cycle around the sun, again, just roll with me here, is 11.86 years. 11.86 years. In other words, Jupiter has an almost precise 83-year cycle in which it will return to the same degree on roughly the same dates every 83 years, okay? Every 83 years. So when we do a calculation between 9/1/39 and 9/1/2022, what do we get? 83 years. So what we're witnessing is not last year, not the year before, but this year. This year is where Jupiter lands exactly on the degree of the start of World War II. Where is it? I think it's over here. Hold on. Right there. Right there. Bang. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that we could be lurching towards another world war? Quite possibly. I mean, look at what's going on in Europe right now. You have the Russians, you have the Ukrainians. Now, this whole thing started in Poland. So Poland has been a country that has been a staging area for the West. I'm telling you right now. So whatever they've been doing in terms of drone flights, helicopters, there are divisions of U.S. troops that are in Poland. Poland is a NATO country. So keep your eye on Poland, not Ukraine. We already know, like, the high strange in Ukraine. Keep your eye on Poland, because I think if anything is going to go down, it'll have something to do with Poland, because this is the day, September 1st, 19th, and we are right there where Jupiter is going to be at that degree, that exact degree, 83 years later. That degree. You get a Jupiter return, what is it, 11.85, right? But it won't be exact. This is the exact Jupiter return. Let's throw in another little piece here. Look at Uranus. It's at 21 degrees. Now, transit in Uranus is not exact. It's at 18. It's retrograde, but we're pretty damn close. We are pretty damn close to Uranus being right here. And what is Jupiter doing? Right? There's a couple things. We got the inconjunct with the sun and the inconjunct with Venus. So in Virgo, the sun in Virgo is going to be more circumspect and more conservative. Venus in Virgo, not real risk-taking, by the way. Venus in Virgo likes to limit the amount of risk it will take in relationship to an agreement. But here, with the Jupiter inconjunct, you can even see this, right? Like, the Russians had an agreement. The Germans had an agreement with the Russians. And if I'm not mistaken, that once they went into Poland, they either violated that agreement or they were on the verge of violating that agreement. So we have this Jupiter inconjunct with Venus, Jupiter inconjunct the sun. So what agreements are in place right now that would be technically in violation of some spirit, like some NATO agreement. So keep your eye on things here. What are we, like 3 days out? Because this Jupiter return only fucking happens once every 83 years. And boys and girls, the 83rd cycle is this first day of September. It's coming. And it's in Aries. And we know it's retrograde. So what does that mean? Does that mean it's going backwards in time to reconnect to what happened during this space, this place, and this time? We also have the moon here, which is just coming off being full. We know that we just came through a new moon, so we're not going to be in a full moon here for what? The new moon was on what, Friday, Saturday? So for at least another 10 days. So that's not going to happen. I think this is a very interesting chart. You know, look at the transits. Right now, we got transiting moon in Virgo. Oh, there it is. Transiting moon in Virgo. So we are in this Virgo moon still. Look at that. Very interesting. So where was Saturn then? Taurus. So we have South Node. This is this weird time, right? Like everything goes back into some de-evolutionary pattern. They have this period of ramping up, like all this shit gets invented during Uranus and Aries. And then they get to try it out on the battlefield. And then what happens? You know, these countries, you know, get blown back into, you know, some, you know, kind of, you know, slightly, you know, Middle Ages representation. But keep in mind, there are a lot of ancient buildings, ancient structures. There's a lot of Tartarian artifacts in Europe that get blown up during this time. World War I is a horrible, World War II and World War I. It's part of the same thing. They're a continuum. And you have this interregnum between wars, but it's still one big war. Whatever they had completely demolished and whatever boundaries they had completely redrawn happened here. And it's really about the advance of communism. Like that is clearly in the wind here. Where's Saturn again? Taurus. What's it doing? Squaring Mars. Look at this. Even Pluto retrograding. It won't go all the way back to Mars, but it's getting pretty close. Pluto and Leo. Yeah. So these are really super early boomers being born during this time, because that's usually like a baby boomer time, right? 1939. Pluto and Leo. And here we have Chiron again, Cancer, pretty much conjunct Sirius. But to me, like the selling point of this chart is right there. It's this Jupiter return of every 83 years. And, you know, look, we have been on this path now where the shenanigans with the whole COVID bullshit are starting to come to light. Like that's happening. Fauci stepping down. Ron DeSantis wants to toss him like a lawn elf across the Potomac. So this is going to continue to be more and more of an issue as the days and weeks go on. It's not going to go away. It's not going away. So what are they going to need? What are they going to need? They're going to need something big, right? Something big. And would anybody be surprised if all of a sudden a strange conflagration or something sparked an international event, and the next thing you know, we're back in 1939 all over again? It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look at the parallels. People are talking about, you know, Trump as the new Hitler, the right, the quote unquote right, the conservatives, Christians, the MAGA people. They're the new Nazis, the new fascists. And what are we seeing? We're seeing this cycle being played out again vis-a-vis Jupiter and Uranus back from 1939. The ghosts of that conflict, that epoch, that era are swirling and circulating. And the people that love to decimate populations and, redraw the global map and come up with new systems, of course, coming out of World War II, you have the United Nations, which promised never to ever have another event like that again, right? They love to create what? Order out of chaos. Do we have enough chaos yet? I don't think so. I don't think so, because ultimately the next order that comes out of chaos theoretically would be the final order. It will be the final solution so that they could have the final order to end all chaos, all wars, all conflict, all strife. They have to raise it up to this frothing fever pitch. And here we are, 83 years later, the Jupiter return of World War II. And it's just days away. Is it going to start? Is it going to happen? I hope not. We got a really cool event that we're going to be a part of in October. Frankly, I'm not ready to deal with World War III prior to the event or even after the event. But the stakes are so high now, and that we've seen the wheels grinding and just grinding and grinding. And, there are, it's people are being caught, lives are being caught, livelihoods are being caught in the grinding of these wheels, the gears, right? It's like a human meat grinder now. So in order for this thing to continue to move forward, they're going to have to create an atmosphere where everything is so dysfunctional. Everything is so dysfunctional that they'll need a comprehensive order for the rule of law. And how do you do that? You have to completely bring everything up to a level where it must ultimately be destroyed and then mandated and controlled for something new. We're not that far away for that potential. And don't forget, though, that you as an individual have an opportunity on a day-to-day basis. Go back to that chart with Chiron, right? What did we see? We saw the South Node in Aries. We saw the deficit of the individual. And how is that transformed? It's transformed through the interaction with another person in a way that is equal, balanced, harmonic. Don't forget, look, I don't have a problem if I have to, go 3 or 4 alarm fire or whatever, I can do it. But that's not what my practice is right now. My practice is to offset that shit, right? We know it's here. We know that's what they want. They're just throwing kerosene on everything. And they're basically pissing people off so much and being so divisive that they're handing up like boxes of matches while they're doing it. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Just light the fire. Just start the fire. We'll take care of the rest. And I'm not into it. I'm just not into it. That doesn't mean that I don't agree with a bunch of the bullshit that's going on. I don't agree with it. In fact, we talk about it, and it's important to talk about it. But are we going to play a script? And we're going to play this script out, so we're going to do exactly what they want, and we're going to be each other's throats. And it's like, you know what? If the time comes and we have to take care of our families and whatever we have to do, that's what we have to do. It's just the way it is. That's the way it is. But until then, right? I'm going to treat you with respect. I'll treat you with a degree of dignity. Namaste. The God of me recognizes the God in you. And if you can't recognize the God in you, or God in me recognizes God in you. And if you can't recognize God in you, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I can't help you. I can point that out, but unless you're open to hearing it, what does it matter? It's called casting pearls before swine. So we have a choice. We have an option, and it has to do with how we treat each other. And we're in every lab of everyday experience with this thing. So coming up real quick here, September 1st, we got the Jupiter return to the first day, the inaugural day of World War I. Watch what play it gets. And remember the back script: Trump, the Nazi, the fascists, the Americans, the Christians, the Christian nationalists, the alt-right, right? Is America the new Germany? Think about that for a second. Are we here in this country the new Germany? And we may not even really be the new Germany, but that's the script that is being written. And rapidly we are approaching that 83rd year cycle of the Jupiter return for World War II. Also with Uranus very close in Taurus. Interesting to think about and scary to contemplate, though I do not want to leave you on a scary note tonight because that's not my intent. But I've been wanting to talk about World War II for a while. It's been about 3 weeks since I've been able to address it in a way that I think might be useful for everybody. Let's take a quick look at the chart of the moment, and maybe we can end our night on that. So let's do this. And moon is at 26 Virgo. So we're still in that new moon phase. San Diego. Well, let me flip this up. All right. Mods, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time and attention to detail. I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers too. Let's do that. Let me just do a quick little chart of the moon, because I do want to talk about Aaron Rodgers. I have no idea what's going on in this chart, but I got to tell you, it's fucking interesting what's happening with him. All right. So this is like right now. We got Jupiter. There it is. Front and center. Chart of the moment. Look at that. Topic du jour. Right on the button. That's interesting. There's the moon, 26. So we're still in this new moon phase. I hope you had you know what I did this weekend? Let me tell you what I did this weekend. I don't talk about shit like this very often, but I bought a car this weekend. It was such a moon and Virgo car moment. I bought a hybrid. I can't believe it. I bought a fucking hybrid. It's an old hybrid. Came out in 2006, so I got a used car. And for the roughly last year or so, I've been driving around in a Cadillac Escalade. It's in fact, it's older than the car I bought on Saturday. And when I bought it, gas was reasonable. It's no longer reasonable. And the reason why I like the Escalade is because I'm 6'3". I get to ride up high, and it's got a great fucking sound system, and the air conditioning is like an ice box. But the gas is killing me. It's killing me. Like, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm going to spend too much money on gas. I actually found a really good deal on an old hybrid, and it had 98,000 miles on it. I'm like, fuck it. I'm going to get this thing. So I got it. And now I got to sell my lovely gas guzzler. And I like that car. I drove that car all the way to California, and then I drove it from here to South Carolina. So it's, seen the East Coast and the West Coast. I like the car. It's a good car. But I can't afford it. So what did I do in a Virgo new moon? I bought a more efficient fucking car. How about that? That's what I did. And what was it doing? Opposing Neptune. I can't spend all this fucking money on gas. And this car, I'll tell you what it is. I don't care. I got it. I got a 2006 Lexus Hybrid. Okay. Had 98,000 miles on it. Where are you going to find that? Where are you going to find that? So I did it. And now I got to sell my Cadillac. Anybody want to buy a Cadillac? It's a nice car. Anyway, that's where we are. Tomorrow you get up, you're going to have a Moon-Mercury conjunction, which, you know, I like. Tonight, good vibes tonight. Moon-Pluto trine. I think we got into some good shit tonight. Right? Sun in conjunct Jupiter, shining a light on this Jupiter cycle of 83 years, which not encouraging, I have to say, but nonetheless, it's there tomorrow. Even now, Moon-Mercury conjunction, you know, it's a cool conjunction. I actually have that conjunction in my chart, although the Moon is a little bit ahead of Mercury, but nonetheless, it's in there. Intuition, right? Intuition, instinct, memory. This is a really good 48-hour cycle for memory. I think it's great. With the Moon-Neptune opposition, I feel like, especially in this grand trine over the next 48 hours, you can have some, you know, emotional input and content. That's really fair. Like, it's totally fair. So tomorrow we'll still have Moon in trine with Pluto, conjunction with Mercury. I love it. It's great. Trine Mars, action, operating on your instincts. I guess that's kind of what I did. I operated on my instincts because I went into Craigslist and I typed, you know, what I was looking for. It's like, shit, it's right here in San Antonio. Look at the price. It's a reasonable price. I'll get this thing. Now I just have to sell my other car. Anyway, I like the week ahead, although we are going to be moving on the 1st, right, with this Jupiter return for World War II. So just stay on your toes. And what can you do? I mean, there are only so many things you can do. Let's go through the things that you can do. Well, you can master time travel, and you can time travel out of this period that we're in. Some people can do that. You can master time travel. You could be in alignment with God, and if it's God and Jesus Christ, right? Sananda, Yeshua Emmanuel, you're in alignment with that. You'll be wherever you need to be. Wherever you need to be, you'll be there. You have to let it go at that point. You could be an uber fucking survivalist and everything planned out. But I got to tell you, if you're not right with God, it may not matter. Crazy shit can happen. You may have the most kick-ass, bug out base ever. And on your way to your bug out base, who knows? You get a flat tire and you get hijacked by a drug cartel. You just don't know, right? You don't know. But if you're right, and whatever happens, and you're there where you need to be. Or if you have done some preparation and you want to see if you can stick things out. I mean, really, there's only so many options that a person can have at this point in time. But the best option from a moment-to-moment basis, try to live as fearlessly, courageously, lovingly, respectfully as possible. You do those things and there's a better chance that you'll wind up in the right place than not. Okay? There's a better chance. Do I think World War II is going to start this? World War III is going to start? No, I don't. However, that said, we'll see the echoes of it reverberate much louder than we've ever heard before. And the reason why I know this is because of the term fascist that's been being bandied about. And it's the same language that Antifa used, or antifascist, right? The group, the organization, the federation, which arose just prior to World War II. And these were communists, by the way. So anytime you get into the whole anti-fascist thing, it's always boiled down to the communists versus the fascists. You know, are we really that like binary? Are we really that binary in that world? I don't think so. Anyway, we got a good week ahead. Don't allow the stormy clouds of Jupiter, red Jupiter, to descend upon you and put you into a state of paralysis and fear. Do not do that. But be ready to act, though. Mars and Gemini is like, if it's in your wheelhouse and you can do it, you act on it. That's where Mars and Gemini is now. It's like it could cut, especially with this Mars Mercury trine. You know, Mercury's going to, catch up to Mars here. There's just no time for like contemplating. It's like, do it fucking now. Right? Do it now. Don't get hung. We've already gone through this Mercury Neptune kind of, this Hamlet piece. By the way, to me, Hamlet's always been very Libran. Like Hamlet can't make up his fucking mind. Anyway, we've moved past that now. Activation of will, activation of thought, action, your central nervous system and will. That's on. That part is on. And we have, 2 days of this in conjunct with Jupiter. It's going to be very interesting. Keep your eyes on the World War II radar, the Hitlerian theme, the fascist theme, and keep your eyes on the Ukraine-Poland border. Okay? I got one more thing to share with you tonight. It's kind of an interesting little thing. So what's her name? Juliette Binoche. Juliette Binoche. You know what she is? She is the actress. If I can find this thing. Yes. Oh, okay. So we got one guy here, Adam Kay, the author of This Is Going to Hurt, I'm Going from a Straight Marriage to a Gay One, will push him to quit medicine and the traumatic event he buried for years. So what did he say? I'd been pretending for most of my life. So we got that. That's a very like Mars Gemini thing. Am I right? He's gonna switch teams. And then you have Julia Binoche. I've loved two men at once. The actress turned to her personal experience for her role in Both Sides of the Blade. I loved two men at once. She was in a love triangle. So we have both, right? We have a guy who switch hits, says, I've had enough. No more acting. I'm going to give you my true self. And then you have Julia Binoche, who's like, two guys at once, Mars and Gemini, no big deal. No biggie. Isn't it funny how the world turns when astrology is involved? It's all there. It is the astrological matrix. So thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate all of your time and your attention to some of the things we talk about. I'll be back on Tuesday over on 15 Minutes of Flame. It's 15 Minutes of Flame, OVFLAME. And we get into some interesting topics of conversation over there. Did a great show with Russ Winter on Friday on this channel. Go back and check it out. And I think that's about it. I think we're good. The event sold out. We hit it. And for everybody that's going to be at the event, I look forward to seeing you. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to stay up with what's possible. For me and my guy, Jasper, we're out of here.